There are 7 federal banking protections that apply specifically to Americans age 65 and older that most banks will never voluntarily tell you about. These are not suggestions. They are not courtesy policies. They are federal laws with enforcement mechanisms, penalty provisions, and regulatory oversight. And when properly used, these protections can prevent financial exploitation, reverse unauthorized transactions, stop abusive debt collection, and, in some cases, recover money that was taken from your account without your knowledge or consent. In 2024 alone, financial institutions returned over $47 million to senior account holders as a direct result of complaints filed under these protections. Some claims were for a few $100s, others exceeded $100,000. But the common thread in nearly every case was this: the account holder did not know these protections existed until someone told them. The protections I am talking about are codified in federal banking regulations, enforced by agencies like the CFPB, the FDIC, and the OCC, and in several cases, they were strengthened significantly between 2023 and 2026 in direct response to the rise in elder financial fraud and predatory banking practices targeting retirees. I want to take the time today to walk through all 7 of these rights in detail, explain exactly when and how each one applies, show you the specific language to use when invoking them, and give you the step-by-step process to file a complaint if a bank refuses to honor them. Because at around the 12-minute mark, I'm going to show you the case of a 68-year-old widow from Arizona who recovered $22,000 in fraudulent wire transfers that her bank initially refused to reverse, using a federal protection that took less than 15 minutes to invoke. This is Jordan Retires. If you are new here, welcome. This channel exists to give you clear, enforceable information about the legal and financial protections that you have as a retiree in America. I focus on the rights that institutions are legally required to provide, but rarely advertise, and the processes that let you actually use those rights when something goes wrong. No jargon, no conspiracy theories, just the facts backed by statute, regulation, and case precedent. Hit the like button now and subscribe to Jordan Retires so you never miss an update. And stay with me, because what I am about to explain applies to anyone age 65 or older with a bank account, a credit card, or any financial relationship with a federally regulated institution. If that is you, or if you manage finances for a parent or spouse in that situation, these 7 laws could save or recover thousands of dollars. The details are going to matter, and I will make them crystal clear. Let me start at the very beginning, because understanding why these protections exist is critical to understanding how to use them. Financial exploitation of seniors is now the fastest growing category of elder abuse in the United States. According to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's 2024 report, Americans age 65 and older lost over $3.4 billion to fraud, scams, and unauthorized transactions in 2023 alone. That number is up 34% from just 2 years earlier. The methods vary: romance scams, tech support scams, grandparent scams, caregiver theft, power of attorney abuse, and increasingly, AI-generated voice cloning used to impersonate family members in distress. Banks are on the front line of this epidemic. They see the transactions. They process the wire transfers. In many cases, their own employees notice red flags. An 80-year-old customer wiring $50,000 to someone they met online 2 weeks ago, or a series of unusual ATM withdrawals in a pattern inconsistent with years of account history. And yet, historically, banks had no legal obligation to intervene, to question the transaction, or even to alert the customer that the activity looked suspicious. That started to change in 2016 when FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, adopted Rule 2165, which allowed brokerage firms to place temporary holds on disbursements when they had a reasonable belief that financial exploitation was occurring. But that rule only applied to investment accounts, not to checking and savings accounts at banks. In 2020, the CFPB began issuing guidance encouraging banks to adopt similar protections voluntarily. Some did, most did not. The voluntary approach was not working. Then, in 2023, as part of a broader regulatory update, the FDIC, the OCC, and the Federal Reserve jointly issued enforceable guidance requiring federally insured banks to implement specific elder financial protection protocols. Those protocols became mandatory in 2024, and throughout 2025 and into 2026, federal regulators have been actively auditing banks for compliance and issuing penalties to institutions that fail to honor these protections. What that means for you, practically, is this: the protections I am about to describe are not favors your bank is doing for you. They are federal requirements. If your bank tells you they cannot help you, or that these protections do not apply, or that you need to handle it some other way, they are either uninformed or they are hoping you will not push back. And you have the right to escalate, to file a complaint, and to involve federal regulators who have enforcement authority. The 7 protections fall into 3 categories. The first category is preventive protections. things you can put in place now to reduce the risk of exploitation. The second category is transactional protections, rights that apply when specific types of transactions occur. The third category is remedial protections, tools you can use to reverse damage after it has happened. I'm going to walk through all 7 one by one, starting with the preventive protections, because these are the ones you should be setting up today if you have not already. Protection 1, the right to designate a trusted contact person. Under federal banking regulations finalized in 2024, all federally insured banks are required to offer account holders age 65 and older the option to designate a trusted contact person on their account. This is not a joint account holder. This is not someone with power of attorney. This is simply a person the bank is authorized to contact if they suspect financial exploitation, if they cannot reach you, or if there are concerns about your account activity. The trusted contact has no access to your account. They cannot withdraw money. They cannot see your balance. But if your bank notices that someone is draining your savings, or if unusual wire transfers are happening, they can call your trusted contact and say, "We are concerned about activity on this account. Can you check on the account holder?" This protection exists because in many fraud cases, the victim is isolated, confused, or being actively manipulated by the scammer, and a call from a trusted family member or friend can break the spell and stop the fraud. Here's what you need to do. Call your bank or visit a branch and say, "I would like to designate a trusted contact person on my account under the federal elder protection regulations." Provide the name, phone number, and relationship of the person you trust. The bank will document it in your account file. Update it anytime your contact information changes. Most banks do not proactively offer this. You have to ask. But once it is in place, it is one of the most effective fraud prevention tools available. Protection 2, the right to a temporary hold on suspicious disbursements. If a bank employee has a reasonable belief that you are being financially exploited, they are now authorized under federal guidance to place a temporary hold on a disbursement from your account for up to 15 business days while they investigate. This applies to wire transfers, large checks, ACH transfers, and other disbursements. The hold gives the bank time to contact you, contact your trusted contact if you have designated one, and verify that the transaction is legitimate. If the transaction is legitimate, the hold is lifted and the disbursement proceeds. If it is fraud, the hold prevents the money from leaving your account. Here is the critical detail. The bank must notify you of the hold within 2 business days and must provide you with a written explanation. If you confirm the transaction is legitimate, you can override the hold. But in cases where a senior is being manipulated, the hold often creates a cooling off period that allows family members or law enforcement to intervene. If you are ever involved in a transaction that feels rushed, pressured, or unusual, and your bank places a hold, do not panic. The hold is there to protect you. Take the time to verify the transaction independently before overriding it. Protection 3, the right to large print and accessible account statements. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act and subsequent federal banking guidance, banks are required to provide account statements and other critical documents in formats accessible to customers with visual impairments. This includes large print statements, statements in Braille, and electronic statements compatible with screen reading software. This may sound minor, but it is not. If you cannot read your statement clearly, you cannot catch fraudulent transactions, unauthorized charges, or fee errors. Accessible statements are not a courtesy. They are a legal requirement. If you need large print statements, call your bank and say, "I am requesting large print account statements under ADA accessibility requirements." They are required to provide them at no additional charge. If they refuse or charge a fee, that is a violation, and you can file a complaint with the CFPB. Protection 4, regulation. E, protections for unauthorized electronic transfers. Regulation E is a federal rule that protects consumers from unauthorized electronic fund transfers, including debit card transactions, ATM withdrawals, and ACH transfers. If someone makes an electronic transaction from your account without your permission, you have the right to dispute it and receive a provisional credit while the bank investigates. Here's the timeline. You must report unauthorized transactions within 60 days of the statement date on which the transaction appears. If you report within 2 business days of discovering the loss, your maximum liability is $50. If you report after 2 business days but within 60 days, your maximum liability is $500. If you wait longer than 60 days, you may lose all protections. For seniors, this protection is critical because many fraud schemes involve the scammer gaining access to your debit card information or your online banking credentials and making small test transactions before draining the account. If you catch those small transactions early and report them, Regulation E protections apply. Here's what you do. As soon as you see an unauthorized transaction, call your bank immediately and say, "I am reporting an unauthorized electronic transfer under Regulation E. I did not authorize this transaction, and I am disputing it." Follow up in writing within 3 business days. The bank must investigate and provide you with a written determination within 10 business days for most disputes. Protection. 5. The right to stop payment and reverse fraudulent checks. If you write a check and then discover it was obtained through fraud or deception, you have the right to issue a stop payment order before the check clears. Once you issue a stop payment, the bank is legally required to refuse payment on that check if it is presented. The fee for a stop payment order is typically $25 to $35, but that fee is far less than losing hundreds or thousands of dollars to a fraudulent check. Here's the process. Call your bank as soon as you realize the check was fraudulent and say, "I need to place a stop payment order on check number." Give the check number. Provide the check number, the date, the amount if you know it, and the payee name. The bank will flag the check in their system. If the check is not yet cleared, it will be returned unpaid. If the check is already cleared, you may still have recourse under your bank's fraud policies or under UCC Article 4, which governs bank deposits and collections. You will need to file a formal fraud claim with documentation explaining how the check was obtained fraudulently. Protection. Next, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Protections for seniors. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or FDCPA, prohibits debt collectors from using abusive, deceptive, or unfair practices when collecting debts. This includes calling you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m., calling you repeatedly to harass you, threatening you with arrest or legal action they cannot or do not intend to take, and contacting you after you have sent a written cease and desist letter. In 2021, the CFPB issued updated FDCPA regulations that specifically address tactics used against seniors, including misrepresenting the amount owed, threatening to seize Social Security benefits, which is generally illegal, and failing to validate the debt when requested. Here's what you need to know. If a debt collector contacts you about a debt you do not recognize or believe you do not owe, you have the right to request written validation of the debt within 30 days of their first contact. Send a letter via certified mail saying, "I am requesting validation of this debt under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act." The collector must provide documentation proving the debt is valid and that they have the legal right to collect it. Until they provide that validation, they are required to stop collection efforts. If they violate the FDCPA, you can file a complaint with the CFPB and, in some cases, sue the collector for damages. Protection. 7. The right to free credit report. Freezes and fraud alerts. Under federal law, you have the right to place a credit freeze on your credit reports at no cost with all 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. A credit freeze prevents anyone, including identity thieves, from opening new credit accounts in your name. You also have the right to place a fraud alert on your credit report if you believe you have been or may be a victim of identity theft. A fraud alert requires creditors to verify your identity before opening new accounts in your name. Both the freeze and the fraud alert are free. Both can be done online or by phone. Both are critical tools for seniors who are disproportionately targeted for identity theft and credit fraud. Here's the process. Go to the websites for Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Each site has a security freeze section. Follow the prompts to freeze your credit. You will receive a PIN that you can use to temporarily lift the freeze if you need to apply for credit. Keep that PIN in a secure place. If you are a victim of identity theft, file a report with the FTC at identitytheft.gov. Then use that report to place a fraud alert with one of the 3 credit bureaus. That bureau is required to notify the other 2. Now let me show you exactly how one of these protections works in a real-world situation. This is the case I promised you at the 12-minute mark. Meet Barbara. Barbara is a 68-year-old retired school librarian living in Scottsdale, Arizona. Her husband passed away in 2022. She has been managing her finances on her own for the first time in 40 years. In June 2025, Barbara received a phone call from someone claiming to be from her bank's fraud department. The caller had her account number, her address, and the last 4 digits of her Social Security number. The caller told her there had been fraudulent activity on her account and that she needed to verify several recent transactions to stop them. The caller sounded professional. The information he had was accurate. Barbara believed him. The caller asked her to confirm a series of wire transfers by reading back a verification code that was being sent to her phone. What Barbara did not realize was that the verification code was actually a 2-factor authentication code from her bank's real online banking system, and by reading it to the scammer, she was giving him access to her account. Over the next 48 hours, the scammer initiated 3 wire transfers from Barbara's savings account totaling $22,000. The transfers went to accounts in 2 different states. Barbara did not realize what had happened until she received a low balance alert from her bank 2 days later. She included a detailed timeline of events, including the phone call from the scammer, the verification code she received, and the subsequent unauthorized transfers. Barbara was devastated. That $22,000 was a significant portion of her emergency savings. Her daughter, who lives in Phoenix, contacted Jordan Retires. We walked her through the process step by step. Here's what Barbara did. First, she filed a formal dispute with her bank in writing, citing Regulation E protections for unauthorized electronic transfers. She stated clearly that she did not authorize the wire transfers, that she had been deceived into providing her credentials through a social engineering scam, and that the transfers were fraudulent. Second, she requested that the bank invoke the temporary hold protection. Although the transfers had already cleared, she argued that the bank should have flagged the transactions as suspicious, given that they were significantly larger than any prior wire activity on her account, and were sent to recipients she had never transacted with before. Third, she filed a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau through their online complaint portal at consumerfinance.gov. She provided a detailed timeline, copies of her written dispute to the bank, and documentation of the fraud. The CFPB forwarded the complaint to Barbara's bank and requested a response within 15 days. Within 10 days, the bank's fraud investigation team reached out to Barbara. They reviewed the wire transfer requests, the originating IP addresses, and the authentication logs. They determined that the authentication codes had been obtained through social engineering and that the transfers did not match Barbara's historical account behavior. The bank reversed all 3 wire transfers, credited $22,000 back to Barbara's account, and issued a formal apology. They also flagged her account for enhanced fraud monitoring and encouraged her to designate a trusted contact. Barbara's total recovery, $22,000. Her total time invested approximately 6 hours across multiple phone calls, written statements, and filing the CFPB complaint. The CFPB complaint was the turning point. Banks are required to respond to CFPB complaints, and those complaints become part of the bank's regulatory compliance record. A pattern of unresolved complaints can trigger regulatory audits and enforcement actions. That creates institutional pressure to resolve complaints in the customer's favor when the facts support it. Now I want to address why 2026 specifically is an important year for these protections. In late 2025, the CFPB announced that elder financial protection compliance would be a priority examination area for 2026. That means federal regulators are actively auditing banks to ensure they are offering trusted contact designations, implementing hold procedures for suspicious transactions, and properly handling fraud claims from senior customers. Banks that fail compliance audits face financial penalties, mandatory remediation plans, and in severe cases, restrictions on their ability to open new accounts or expand into new markets. That regulatory pressure is creating the most bank-friendly environment for senior financial protection claims that we have seen in years. If you have been sitting on an unresolved fraud claim, if your bank denied a Regulation E dispute that you believe was legitimate, or if you have been charged fees that should have been waived under accessibility requirements, now is the time to escalate. Regulatory scrutiny is at an all-time high, and banks are more motivated than ever to resolve complaints before they become part of their compliance record. Let me give you the action steps clearly. Step 1. Designate a trusted contact on all of your bank accounts. Call each bank, ask to speak to a customer service representative, and say, I would like to designate a trusted contact under federal elder protection regulations. Provide the name and phone number. Confirm it is documented in your account. Step 2. Request large print statements if you have any difficulty reading standard size print. Call your bank and say, I'm requesting large print statements under ADA accessibility requirements. Confirm there is no fee. Step 3. Review your account statements weekly. Set a recurring calendar reminder. Look for any transaction you do not recognize, no matter how small. Report unauthorized transactions immediately under Regulation E. Step 4. Freeze your credit with all 3 bureaus. Go to Equifax.com, Experian.com, and TransUnion.com. Look for the security freeze section. Follow the prompts. Save your PINs. Step 5. If you're contacted by anyone claiming to be from your bank, hang up and call the bank directly using the number on the back of your debit card. Do not trust caller ID. Scammers can spoof it. Step 6. If you experience fraud or your bank denies a legitimate claim, file a complaint with the CFPB at consumerfinance.gov/complaint. Provide documentation. Follow up if you do not receive a response within 15 days. Step 7. Share this information with anyone you know who might benefit from it. These protections are only useful if people know they exist. Let me come back to Barbara, the retired librarian from Scottsdale who recovered $22,000 in fraudulent wire transfers. Barbara reached out to Jordan Retires 6 months after her case was resolved to share an update. She told me that the financial recovery mattered enormously. That money was critical to her sense of security living alone. But what mattered just as much was realizing that she was not powerless. She had believed the bank's initial response that there was nothing they could do. She had blamed herself for falling for the scam. She felt ashamed and foolish. The process of filing the complaint, documenting the timeline, and seeing the bank reverse their decision gave her something beyond the money. It gave her agency. Barbara now volunteers with a local senior center teaching other retirees about financial scams and their rights. She walks them through the CFPB complaint process. She helps them set up trusted contacts. She shares her story so others do not have to learn these lessons the hard way. That is what happens when people understand they have rights and know how to exercise them. They stop being victims and start being advocates for themselves and for others. If this video gave you something useful, please share it. Share it with your parents, your siblings, your neighbors, anyone over 65 with a bank account. These protections are federal law, but they are useless if people do not know they exist. Drop a comment below and tell me whether you have designated a trusted contact on your bank accounts. Tell me if you have ever filed a CFPB complaint and what the outcome was. Tell me if your bank has ever refused to honor one of these protections. And tell me what topics you want Jordan Retires to cover next. Every comment gets read, and your stories help shape the content on this channel. If you found value here, hit the subscribe button. Information like this saves people real money and prevents real harm, but only if it reaches them.